So if you haven't heard the term vibe coding, don't worry, you're not out of the loop. You're probably just still tethered to some kind of reality. Vibe coding is essentially the idea that instead of actually writing the code that's necessary to make an application or a piece of software do what it's supposed to do, you only have to prompt an AI in normal, everyday language, and it'll write the code for you. And voila, you have software that runs exactly like it's supposed to, and you don't even know how to program. So it sounds kind of like a dream as long as your dream involves being a passenger in a car with no steering wheel. Sometimes it works perfectly. Other times, the AI provides code filled with errors that are kind of like digital landmines waiting for you to step on them. There's the fundamental problem right there. If you're vibe coding and you don't know what the code actually does, how do you correct the errors? How do you know whether the application is safe to run or if it's going to eat your file system and still be hungry for more? Relying on AI to build things is like building a skyscraper out of marshmallows just because they're easy to stack. I'll be the first to acknowledge AI can be incredibly useful. It can help immensely with building a system, even when you don't fully understand the structure as you're building it. I've used AI to help me develop working programs as I've built the Quiet Frontier website. I am not a programmer nor a developer. I'm not even close. For me, AI has been kind of a scaffolding that I've used to build a working knowledge of computer systems and some basic coding skills to help me maintain the site and everything that goes with the site. In that context, AI has been a fantastic resource. But there's another side to that coin, and it's a lot less pleasant. I've also spent hours trying to figure out why all the entries I had saved in a database that I'd created, 760 of them to be exact, were suddenly gone. Ultimately, the reason was that I ran a script provided by AI without actually reading it first. Poof, database gone. It took days to recreate it. I was frustrated and I was angry. But who was I angry at? The AI model? It just wrote the script. I was responsible for running it. Angry at myself? Yeah, definitely for a minute. The real issue is that even if I had read the script, I probably wouldn't have recognized what it was about to do. And that's really the problem that I want to talk about today on a much greater level. You could call it the vibe life. Living the vibe life is kind of like navigating a minefield by following the scent of flowers. As a society, we've come to very easily accept a lack of understanding as the norm. As long as everything works, we hardly notice that we don't really know how it all works. And that's fine when things go well. But it becomes catastrophic when things deviate from the script. Then we're utterly lost. When the product from an online retailer doesn't arrive, and we end up in an endless loop of customer service automations that provide no avenue to address the problem, we feel it. When we log into an online service that we need, and they inexplicably want to know intimate details about our lives, we feel it. When we get charged a cancellation fee for a service we never meant to sign up for in the first place, we feel it. It's the sense of helplessness that comes with having no recourse, not because we're incapable, but because we live in the dark. That's what the vibe life looks like. Moving forward at a blinding rate of speed without a compass, without a roadmap, or any idea how to drive the vehicles that move us. I looked up the word vibe on the Merriam-Webster website. The definition is a distinctive feeling or quality capable of being sensed. By that definition, vibing is kind of similar to acting on instinct. We feel a bad vibe and we try to avoid whatever is giving us that feeling. We feel a good vibe and we wrap ourselves in it. There's no investigation, no effort, just vibing. I felt pretty good when I got that AI model to write a script for me. Then there were all kinds of bad vibes when it deleted my database. The problem with vibe living isn't simply that it involves instinct or emotion. The problem is that surface impressions begin to replace structural understanding. If the system appears to work, if the interface feels smooth, or if the answer sounds convincing, we accept the result without asking what's happening underneath. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with instinct or emotion. Without instinct, we wouldn't have survived as a species. And without emotion, we may as well not have survived. The danger arises when instinct and emotion become the sole determining factors in our decision making. That's where we stop understanding and we start to become helpless. Relying on vibes for complex decisions, it's kind of like trying to perform surgery based on how much you like the patient. It may feel right, but it's not very likely to be effective. The core issue is that feeling and knowing are two different cognitive functions. Feeling tells us if something is pleasant or if it's unpleasant. Knowing tells us why it exists and how it operates. When we prioritize the vibe, we prioritize the immediate emotional response over the structural reality of a situation. In coding, this leads to broken software. In society, it leads to people who feel something's wrong, but can't explain how this system is working against them. To move beyond this helplessness, we have to bridge the gap between sensing a problem and actually understanding it. Treating every new technology or social trend as a vibe without any scrutiny, it's kind of like letting a toddler drive your car because they seem really excited about the steering wheel. We need to develop a sense of cognitive self-regulation. This doesn't mean that we have to become experts in everything. It's impossible to understand the entire stack of modern civilization. But we don't need to understand every line of code. We don't need to understand every financial regulation or every system behind the services we use. But the greater the consequence of failure in one of those systems, the more understanding that we should demand of ourselves before we surrender control to it. If you understand the database, I'll use that example, well enough to recognize the risks, maintain backups, and inspect whatever command you're about to run, a bad script becomes a recoverable mistake rather than a catastrophe. If you don't understand it, the catastrophe happens. A script that renames a few files may require only a quick review and a quick backup. Using technology that collects your personal information, accesses your data, or limits your access to information requires a lot more caution. If you understand it well enough to recognize the risks, you can adjust the settings, you know how to monitor it, then it could be a useful tool. If you don't, it can leave you in a state of completely helpless dependence. The question isn't whether we understand everything. It's really whether our level of understanding matches the level of risk. We need to recognize when we're moving from using a tool to being used by a process, and to consciously decide Which parts of our lives require us to look under the hood a little bit more? And which parts can be left to intuition? Self-regulation is the ability to pause and ask, am I running this app because I understand it? Or am I running it just because it looks nice and feels good? Being a permanent resident of the vibe life is kind of like being a passenger in a car that doesn't have brakes and doesn't have a driver's seat. You're just along for the ride, hoping that the road stays straight. The alternative to this helplessness is agency. Agency comes from the pursuit of competence. When we take our time to understand the underlying logic of the tools we use, of our finances, of our social systems, we start to regain the ability to intervene when things go wrong. We move from being victims of bad vibes to being architects of our own stability. If you know how the database works, a script error is a problem you can solve rather than the catastrophe that you have to endure. To gain a sense of agency, there's 3 questions you can ask when you're considering a new app or a new piece of technology or any major decisions that you're contemplating. These questions can help you to move from an intuitive, emotional decision to a decision that's based on understanding and on personal agency. The first question is, what does this thing actually do? Avoid the click and pray method. Look under the hood before you commit. Is this app actually helping you to organize your life? Or is it just a sophisticated way to harvest your attention and to sell you ads for things you didn't even know you needed? Know the mechanic before you hand over the keys. And second, what happens if it fails? Every piece of technology eventually is going to throw some kind of tantrum. When the magic breaks, and trust me, it will you just lose a high score? Or are you going to lose access to your entire digital identity? Assess the stakes before you bet your peace of mind on some algorithm. And finally, the third question, can I recover control after I use this thing? This is your exit strategy. If the system glitches or starts behaving in some kind of weird way, do you have an undo button? Or are you entering a one-way street? True agency means knowing exactly how to find the emergency exit when things get messy. Never enter some digital contract that doesn't allow for a clean break. Ultimately, the goal isn't to kill the vibe, but it's to use the vibe with clarity. Kind of like using a flashlight in a dark room instead of just hoping that there's no spiders in the corner. We don't have to abandon intuition or the ease that modern technology provides. We can still vibe with AI, and we can still rely on our instincts. But we should do that with an eye toward comprehension. The most powerful way to live is to use your instincts as a beacon, but keep your eyes fixed on the map. That way, when the vibes turn bad, you aren't just lost. You know exactly how to find your way back. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time. And if you're interested in content like this, feel free to check out quietfrontier.com. It's where I post a lot of work on mind, meaning, society, social critique. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Take good care.
My God, are you the author of the pain I feel? My God, won't you listen to a prodigal's appeal? Tell me if is there any hope at all in a world turned upside down? And is there any way to turn back time? The stars look down and I look up, and the truth is never found. Dear God, dear God.